Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Okay, now for the lightning round.
I'm so good at lightning rounds. That's from Friends. It's my favorite show.
20 seconds on the clock starts now. Who is the captain of the USS Enterprise?
Oh, crap. Is it, Captain Stubing? No, Morgan? Crunch?
Next question. Which superhero is Tony Stark?
Stark. Did Game of Thrones have superheroes? I only watched 2 episodes.
What planet were Luke and Leia born on?
Planet Fitness?
Oh, time's up. Sorry. And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hey everybody, Mandy Kaplan here. Please check out my podcast, Make Me a Nerd, where each week an incredible guest tries to baptize this mainstream mom into the world of sci-fi, fantasy, and all things nerdy. Available wherever you podcast.
That's our show, folks.
Wait, I just thought of it. Padme Amidala gave birth to her twins Luke and Leia on Polis Massa. No, that's dumb. Is it Planet Hollywood?
Hey Pete, ever wonder what Steven Spielberg's favorite film is?
You know, Andy, I've heard he loves classics like Lawrence of Arabia, Meet Me in St. Louis.
Imagine chatting with him about why those films resonate with him so much.
That's exactly what we do on our podcast, Movies We Like. We've had incredible guests like actress Dee Wallace, cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt, director Steve Miner, and former Disney animators Tom and Tony Bancroft.
They share their favorite films and the impact they've had on their careers, offering fascinating insights into the craftsmanship and storytelling techniques that make these movies so special.
If you're curious about the magic behind the scenes, subscribe to Movies We Like from True Story FM on your favorite podcast app. New episodes are released on the 4th Monday of each month with early access for our members.
Join us on Movies We Like as we explore the movies we all like with the people who make them.
And Stephen, our people will call your people. Let's make this happen, puppy.
Subscribe today.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Generations podcast. Friends, we had a lot to say about The Last Jedi. You had a lot to say about The Last Jedi. And so we are back with The Last Jedi Part 2. We've got some great listener feedback that we're going to discuss. We've got some topics we wanted to keep talking about. We've got one of my co-hosts, Aaron, looking very confused and not sure what's going on. And one of them, Alex, looking like he's just ready to launch into all the deep thoughts he's had for many, many years. Aaron, why don't you start us off?
So I watched Solo this week. I forgot that we canceled our recording last week.
Well, don't you worry. We'll talk about Solo next time.
I'm super prepared for that next week.
See, Solo is going to get one episode, but Last Jedi not being Solo
doesn't
gets a
even need
duo.
one episode. Okay.
Okay.
So it gets one episode. I'm sorry.
So
Okay, for the listeners,
y'all start talking. I'm going to readjust my mind.
For the listeners who haven't run away yet, thank you so much. We're really excited about continuing this conversation. We've also got some bonus content for the members. Of course, we are going back to reading chapters out of From a Certain Point of View, A New Hope. We're very sorry that a lot of other things have come up for us to talk about in bonus content, but we are going to go back to that and we're going to stay laser focused on that. I'm, of course, lying. Other things will come up, but we're going to try and make sure we're doing those at least 3 out of every 4 episodes so we can keep you going through that book and start getting into some of the next books. Now, for those of you who are wondering what in the world is this bonus content you're talking about, if you become a member, you get bonus content on not only this, but also the Superhero Ethics podcast. Both of them are part of the Ethical Panda family of podcasts, which you can find all on truestory.fm, or you can go to theethicalpanda.com, and there you'll find information about show notes, links to all previous episodes, how to find all of our different guests and awesome co-creators and co-hosts like Aaron's awesome cosplay and things like that. Most importantly, you can find a link to the membership, $5 a month, $55 a year, less than I don't know what the hell coffee thing costs these days, but probably less than like a large venti, whatever. It's you get great content, you get bonus episodes like our book club, and you just get to know that you're helping to keep the lights on, helping to do everything you can to support the work we're doing, and that we can keep giving great content to you. So please think about becoming a member. Hopefully, Aaron's brain has had a chance to shut down and reload. So I'm going to start us off with our first piece of our first bit of listener feedback, because we got 2 great emails actually already. The first one is
Sway.
from Darth Hobbit.
Oh, just Sway.
I know. I love these names people have. Loved your coverage of The Last Jedi and that you all can talk and share opinions and even disagree without it getting ugly. Why can't all discussions of this movie be like that? I mean, 100%. But here's their question. Would love to hear you talk about Hux if you do that second part. Thanks, DH. So yeah, let's talk about Hux.
Yeah, Hux has been on my list to talk about too.
What do you got to say about our red-haired friend?
I just think that his character development is very unique across the trilogy and kind of its like yo-yo-ness a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because this movie opens up with him first seeming very menacing, but also immediately is him being exposed for like kind of a little bitch. I mean, like Poe
Get
just
trolled.
roasting him. And you could see like very typical like man-child behavior, like his temper flares right away. And like I'm gonna go into some deeper lore here. I could be mistaken, so someone correct me if they know, but I'm pretty sure he is the son of a high-ranking general or commander or officer of some kind in the Empire.
That's correct.
Who was one of the leaders who went to Exegol and was one of the leaders in Project Cinder. And so like this Hux that we know, born, bred, imperial ideals, first order ideals, like he probably has the most ridiculous like inferiority complex and daddy issues that known to man. So like it makes sense that he's acting the way he does. And thinking he's like Kylo Ren's equal, thinking he's gonna take over when Snoke eventually dies, and Kylo puts him in his place so quickly. It's just interesting to see like him really try. I almost feel bad for him through a lot of the movie because I think he's really trying to kind of come out of the shadow maybe that his father had put forward and like step into a more powerful role and be Kylo's equal, be Snoke's right-hand man, but he keeps getting pushed aside, made fun of, not taken seriously. It's funny, but I always feel a little bad for him. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. So just to give that further background, he's the son of Brendel Hux, who was a commander in the Empire. He had served in the New Republic before that. He was considered one of the person who inspired tons of loyalty. And then after the Imperial defeated Endor, he was able to escape and was appointed to be a member of the Shadow Council. And so as part of that group that was planning and plotting all throughout that we've seen come up in Andor and seen be mentioned in Resistance. And
Matthew, he was
like
part
that.
of the Old Republic or the New Republic?
He was part of he was an officer in the Old Republic.
Old Republic. Okay.
Right. Oh, sorry if I said New Republic.
No, you're fine. I was just trying to clarify.
Also, interesting detail. Armitage Hux, who's the guy we're talking about, is an illegitimate child of this commander, child of the commander and a kitchen worker, which I just love because it is such a clear reference to like, when the Lord of the Manor and a kitchen wench, just it. And I think it kind of explains what you're talking about, that this is a guy with a huge chip on his shoulder. He has so much to prove. To me, he is the quintessential bully in that he's always looking for people who are weaker than him, who he can boss around. He thinks that he can always get his way by yelling and screaming and shouting. But the minute he finds someone who's stronger than him, like Snoke or Kylo, he's back to bowing down. Except when he thinks that Kylo might be like disempowered and he's like, okay, now I'm going to try and take a spot. Oh, wait, no, that didn't work. All right, I'm back on my knees. Kylo, you're in charge. And I'm just going to bully everyone.
Shut down so immediately by a little force choke.
So fast.
Mm-hmm.
You presume to control my army. Yeah, that went over well for you, bud.
It's so funny. I feel like for Hux, you didn't have to tell me he has daddy issues to know he has daddy issues.
Yeah.
It's just written all over everything about him. Like, he just so badly. I think I agree with you, Alex. I feel bad for him. Truly. Like, because if you were thinking from his point of view, he has been like the perfect soldier, the perfect, then captain, then general, whatever the order is. Like, he does it by the book, and you can tell he takes a lot of pride in his work. And he really believes in it. And like you said, Alex, he just wants to like do better and keep like stepping up to power. And he just gets kind of like cucked at every opportunity, like just kind of shut down. And it's like, it gets to be sad at some point because you don't want to root for him because he's literally, they're comparing him to Hitler in the first movie. So we don't really want to have sympathy for him because if you think about his actual position in the grander story, he's horrible.
Yeah, he's a genocidal, like, maniac.
Exactly.
No, very, very much like not someone you need to like. It's more like it's kind of like, to me at least, it's kind of like that feeling you have where like, there in like the real world, like, a murder goes on trial and you learn that he was like abused and like just had a terrible childhood and upbringing, where it's like it doesn't excuse the actions. There's still a bad, there still should be held accountable for their actions, but like you feel a sense of like I think it's just a sense of human understanding. Like you turned out the way you did probably because of some really unfair circumstances and upbringing, but doesn't excuse what you did. Doesn't make us forgive you for what you did. But I still feel a little bad for you. I kind of where I go with Hux, at least.
No, I think that's totally relevant. And in some ways, it's funny because he's kind of a joke character, but I think that's kind of a central idea of the whole movie is this, because it's a theme of accountability and who is to blame for other people's actions and things like that. And, I think the way he's treated as a child probably has a lot to do with how he becomes who he becomes. On the other hand, there's lots and lots of people with daddy issues who don't blow up planets because of it, or who don't do any of the kind of bad stuff because of it. With one notable exception that we can discuss, Mr. Anakin, but
my goat.
And I mean Tarkin, who actually is the one who blows up the planet, major daddy issues.
Oh yeah.
But so yeah, to me, it's we have to remember by no means as an excuse. Lots of people have those things and don't do these horrible things. But we can also look at it and have, I don't know, for me, the line that is crossed when you become evil is when you stop having any sense of compassion for others. And I think this is the heart and soul of the Force. It's when you stop seeing the dark side is when you lose the humanity or the sentienceness of another person and just see them as the obstacle to your goal. And so it's justified to kill them. But, we can look at someone like Hux and be like, yes, he's a horrible person. He should never be allowed to cause harm again. I'm not sad when he dies. He should be imprisoned or whatever we can do. But I can also still recognize his humanity and recognize that, terrible things happen to him. And that's a part of how he became who he was.
Mm-hmm. Also, listeners, if you want to know about Tarkin's daddy issues, we discussed that in our book club that is members only. So another reason to consider subscribing.
Yes, very true. Very true. A book that is, you'll have a little trouble connecting what book it is. It's called Tarkin. We have some books that are very metaphorically named and some that are just here's what it's about. But it's a good book.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, I think that, and I definitely want to discuss Hux a bit more when we talk about the rise of Skywalker. When that inevitable, incredible conversation occurs, that's going to be poetry in motion, I think. But I just feel like Hux was definitely I think he was more of a serious character in the first movie. I took Hux very seriously throughout most of the first movie. I saw him as a coward, but I took him as a serious villain. And in this movie, I feel like Rian Johnson really tried to strip him of some of his aura and power right away. And you saw him as kind of constantly trying to catch up the whole movie. And like you said, take that power back, but never really succeeded.
And I think it's fun to have him alongside with Kylo, because obviously Kylo's going to win with everything. But they both have this kind of want for the power. And when Snoke was there, there was this thing of of course you can't fight each other. And then the moment that Snoke was gone and Kylo was on the floor, he was like, I'm gonna. And then Kylo woke up. He was like, shit.
Yeah.
It's given major. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matthew.
There really is this essence with both of those characters of they're not Darth Vader and the Emperor. And Tarkin. They're boys cosplaying as that, trying to fill daddy's shoes. Hux is very young. He's late 20s, early 30s. Kylo seemingly is definitely 20 something. So I just love all of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he's giving Hux kind of gives a little bit of Krennic energy, just very whiny and I want power, Daddy Snoke, give me the power. And then Kyle was just like, bitch, I have the power. Get out of my way.
Yeah. So here's our second bit of listener feedback. And this comes from El Violet, which I hope is a reference to Elvira. Maybe it's just I'm thinking that because of spooky season. Either way, it's an awesome name.
Ooh,
but El Violet writes, and she has, they have a two-part question. We're going to answer one now, and the other we'll save towards the end. They write, I love all your discussions, especially when Aaron gets to talk about cosplay. I have two questions. The first is, am I the only one who was kind of disappointed when Snoke got killed? He was such an interesting character, so different from what we'd seen in the other movies. I really wanted to get more of him. My second question is specifically for Aaron. What are the things that grab your attention when you decide to cosplay someone? Alex and Matthew, have you done any cosplay? Are there characters y'all want to try out? Thanks so much. Love it all. El Violet. So we'll save that second question towards the end, but just starting with that first one.
I was really disappointed. Yeah, I was devastated because I was so excited. They built him up so much in the first movie with this giant hologram, and then when you actually see him in person, he's kind of disappointing. So then it's like, okay, well, they got to be shown us something that like shows and explains why he's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah.
I also was very disappointed. I was not disappointed when I saw him, actually. I thought, like, here's this giant creature in gold robes in this all red palace surrounded by guards, and Kylo, like, stands up to him for a second, and Snoke stands up, and one little bolt of it just comes out of his fingertips, and then when it reaches Kylo, it's the size of a lightning bolt and, like, shoots him to the ground. Like, I was like, oh my God. And the Andy Serkis performing his voice, I was like, this man is menacing. They've hired a good voice actor. Like, he's going to be such a cool, unique character. And I had so many theories on who I thought he was. And I was like, you know, the way his face was deformed, and like, I don't understand what possessed them to kill him off. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess they were expecting, like, they really wanted Kylo Ren to be like the big bad in the final movie. And like, I get that to a degree. Like, you don't want to just kind of carbon copy the originals. But if you're going to introduce such a cool character, you can't just kill him off that quickly. And then in the next movie, write him off as just being like, oh, it's Palpatine anyway, so he doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Like, it just totally, all of it just kind of undermines him. And, you know, during the scene, we actually get like the longest with him in the throne room. He's so menacing. It's so cold and icy. I'm like, oh my God. And like, the very least you could do is like, give me like a duel with him. Let me see him in full power fighting Kylo and Rey. And instead, Kylo just kills him because Snoke was full of hubris. Yeah, Palpatine's been asking people to strike him down for 100 years, but that was just the lamest possible way for it to happen. I was extremely disappointed with the disposal of that character and the disposal of Captain Phasma. There was just a lot of killing in this movie. The body count in this movie is actually ridiculous, and some of it was not very satisfactory, but Snoke was probably at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, I admit I'm really torn. First of all, just quick note, if we cannot use the word lame to mean bad.
Yes, sorry.
No worries. I did it all the time for a while before it was pointed out to me. I was really disappointed because, yeah, I wanted so much more Snoke. And where they go with it was freaking awesome, though. The idea of like Rey and Kylo coming together. Like, so I kind of was into it. This is completely theory and conjecture on my part. I've never seen any evidence for this, but I'm wondering if Rian Johnson's idea was that we would get more of both Phasma and Snoke in the third movie in flashbacks. That we would get more of like Kylo being, seduced to the dark side, or like the early days of Kylo joining Snoke, because I think that is such a fascinating part of the story. And yeah, I like that Snoke, he was so different than the Emperor or Vader. If nothing else, like he clearly, maybe he's a very, very deformed human, but my thought was he's clearly not human. And I just love that there was the first in a major movie. Well, I guess the prequels. He was yet another non-human force user, which I really.
Well, I think he's the first non-human like Sith character.
Darth Maul.
Fuck.
Yeah. Okay. So
wait,
that was painful.
Put aside all of that, but even so, like he looked so different. He looked so menacing. I wanted to know, what was his relationship with Kylo? What was his relationship with the Emperor, if at all? And I will say one thing. I hear what you're saying about a duel. The last thing I would ever want is to see him with a lightsaber in his hand.
You don't want to see a massive lightsaber? It would be so funny.
So this is, again, going to be my personal opinion, and it's going to be a bit of a divergence, but we'll get back to this, I promise. One thing I loved about the Emperor so much is that he never uses a lightsaber. because to me, he's above it. He is so powerful. He doesn't need like a toy. From his own hands, he can shoot at the Force and have electric. And it's part of why I utterly hate him using a lightsaber in the prequels, because it's just like, that's not the Emperor to me. And the same way, so like I wouldn't want to see that from Snoke, but yeah, see some kind of contest of wills between him and Kylo and Rey, or to see some of that like back, like maybe Luke confronts him in some way. Like, I don't know, but yeah,
You're saying that a lightsaber is uncivilized?
I'm saying that it's a crutch. And I say that as a person who uses crutches all the time.
I was just making an Obi-Wan reference.
I know. I get it. Barbie-Wan Kenobi has to be spoken of. It's important.
Yeah,
Those who don't know, I'm going to put a post on our Twitter.
That man.
But yeah, now that I'm way off track on a tangent, can either of you pull me back and say more about Snoke?
Even if there wasn't an actual duel, I think that a battle of wits, like, what if it was like Luke projecting himself and like engaging Snoke in a battle of the Force, kind of like, I mean, not exactly like, but like before Yoda and Dooku actually dueled, and they were just using the Force at one another. And I think that was more. I think we discussed this, but I think that was one of the more. That was the more compelling part of their encounter than the actual lightsaber duel was. And I feel like a battle of wits between Snoke and Luke in that way, or just a battle of wits between, like, you know, Snoke has the lightsaber, has Rey's lightsaber. He takes Kylo's as well, and you know, it's like, all right, he tells his guards to stand aside, and he just tries to work. I don't know. The only use of the Force we saw from him was his torture of Rey and that one burst of lightning on Kylo, and that is it. We saw nothing else, and that just feels like really unfortunate for such a cool character. And then he just dies, and I cannot get the image of his half-cut body with his tongue stuck out on the floor ever out of my head.
Yeah, that was something.
It's jarring.
Stupid. Just
Aaron, any other thoughts on Mr. Snoke? What do you think of the feedback, the flashback idea?
I think that's a cool idea. I hadn't thought of something like that. Because yeah, I think I might have said this in the first episode, but when at the end of The Force Awakens, you know, Snoke says like, "Return to me. We're gonna finish your training." I was kind of hoping for like a Mulan style Kylo Ren training montage. That's kind of what I was hoping for, and we didn't get it. So I would have loved to see something like that in flashbacks.
Who knows? Like we get Tales of the Jedi, we get Tales of the Sith, so we might get one of him at some point soon. Side note, we've heard that we're going to get more of Balin's story. The male Jedi, the male orange lightsaber former Jedi in Ahsoka, who is such a phenomenal character. Of course, not voiced by the original actor, who has sadly passed away, but it was someone else who's cast, who I can't remember off the name. But point being, so we might get more of Snoke's story and something like that. But let's talk about the other one also that you mentioned, Alex.
Real quick. Sorry. Just there are comics that talk about Snoke's past a little bit, but it focuses more on the beginning of Snoke training Kylo and like kind of Kylo's fall to the dark side. But we still don't learn a ton. But there is some content that exists out there that is pre-Snoke or pre-sequel Snoke, but it's unfortunately kind of not publicized and kind of buried, which is frustrating to me because I feel like a novel or a show or something would be really, even not a whole show, even just an episode in a Tales of the Jedi type thing would be really beneficial. I just wanted to add that. We can totally talk about Phasma now.
Definitely. And certainly anyone who has read those comics and has more thoughts on it, please write in. All the information is on our website and in the show notes. Let's talk about Phasma. Alex, what do you think of this character and her somewhat early demise?
When I remember watching the original episode 7 trailer and thinking, holy shit, this is the most badass looking stormtrooper I've ever seen in my life. And having this just clad silver mysterious warrior. I mean, she was so menacing. Like in the very first scene, she's just like, "Sir, the villagers," and he's like, "Kill him." She's like, "Great." Just executioner. Like she was scary. And you know, even like the kind of comical, you know, relief at the end of episode 7 where, you know, like a throwing a trash compactor, like that was fine because she came back in episode 8 with a vengeance. And like again, her fight with Finn, one of my favorite fights in the sequel. I mean, that was like raw, it was cool, it was different, I thought.
Yeah, like,
and
creative.
There was a way for that fight to end and her not die. Like it just felt like they hyped up Captain Phasma. They hyped her up. They included her all the promotional materials. They made her a really important thing. Gwen, what's her last name?
Christie.
Gwendoline Christie.
Gwendoline Christie. Thank you. Was speaking at Celebration and panels. Like she was like one of the faces of the promotion of episode 8, and they kill her off. And it's just like, I didn't see like a value. Like there was not like an emotional weight to her death. Like it was actually surprising to me because I just was like, there's no way this is the end of her story. Like I thought she was gonna come back somehow. It was really weird to me that you would kill off such a unique character when there was no need to. Like she could have absolutely been an enforcer under Kylo. Like Kylo could have hired promoted her to be like his personal enforcer, personal girl. There's so many ways that she could have been included. But I felt like she was kind of thrown aside because they're like, crap, we didn't really touch on the Knights of Ren. So now in episode 9, we have to run with the Knights of Ren and just Kylo and throw away all these other cool characters. And it just didn't feel like they were doing it justice. Like Star Wars' strength is at its best when you have these diverse and unique and different characters kind of having their own little roles and stories. And hers just felt like it was cut way too short.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a crime that we got most of a trilogy with Gwendoline Christie as a badass female warrior, and we never got to see the like cracked helmet, you like rip it off, throw it to the side, and like that's what I wanted to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she is huge.
Game of Thrones-esque.
Run exactly. That's what I want. I really just want
Game of Thrones with lightsabers.
I just want Exactly.
And she's such a good actress. If you just look at like what she's done in Game of Thrones, but then compare her to what she did in Sandman, where she's playing literally like the devil. She's playing Lucifer and is just gorgeous and powerful and seductive and evil in all these incredible ways. And like, I'm not saying that's what Phasma should be, but clearly like if that's the range, like there's so much more that could have been done with Phasma. And not to go back to a theme we already talked about, but I feel like having her die so early really hurts Finn as well, because she is his personal enemy. She is the one who notices that he didn't fire his gun, who is harassing him, who is so focused on like, you're the person I hate most, not Poe or not Rey, but you, because you're a deserter. And just imagine, especially like, if you do have any kind of that plot of episode 3 of the last episode 9, of him leading this group of former deserter stormtroopers, and like she's their big bad who they have to confront. I just don't get it. And that one I definitely will blame Rian a little bit on, but I don't know if he like again had a plan to have her come back in flashbacks, or she's in this like full bodysuit with a little bit of her face exposed as she falls into fire. Like people have lived through worse in this universe. So I don't know if his plan was that she wasn't dead, but then again, because they went cut the Knights of Ren, that they just ignored that. I got nothing, but I would have loved so much more from that character.
I do think it's a disconjunction of the directors, because I think that JJ put so much. I think the part of the problem was that Rian just ignored the Knights of Ren in episode 8 completely, and because of that, they felt like they had to overcompensate in episode 9. If they just included them in some aspect, I think maybe instead of the Praetorian Guards, you just had the Knights of Ren, and then Phasma could have been having her bigger role in episode 9 as expected. Not the Praetorian Guards aren't super cool and one of the coolest designs, in Star Wars, but like there's just, I think it was like JJ was like, well, I had this idea in episode 7 and we didn't even get to talk about it in episode 8, so I'm bringing them back and making them the main story. And I don't know. I just Rian made some decisions that we'll never know why, because he had something in mind, I guess, for the future, but it all just felt very silly. Very silly.
It's fair. And I think because I like the 8th movie so much more than the 7th or the 9th, and because I like his vision so much more than JJ's, I always want to be like, let's blame JJ. But I think in fairness, like we don't actually know the exact dialogue. I think at the end, the blame has to be on whoever was the boss of both of them, who didn't just lock them in a room and say like, you got to make one cohesive story over these 3 movies.
I mean, Kathleen Kennedy.
Probably, yeah. And to be clear, I think Kathleen Kennedy has done so many wonderful things for Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. But I also think she's above critique. And I think this is probably the blame for these movies not lining up probably falls most with her.
Yeah. And that is fair, honestly, Matthew. I mean, I'm not sure if JJ even knew he was directing the next movie. I don't know if Ryan knew what he was doing. I think it was the lack of like Ryan got his movie, he wanted to tell his story, didn't know what he was going to get to do in the future, and there wasn't the foresight to plan how is this going to tie into episode 9. We have another movie to do. Like, I mean, the last thing I'll say on this is let's look for a second at Attack of the Clones and Empire. What major characters die in those movies? Correct. None. Because there was a third movie in the trilogy that is when deaths and things happen. That's when like you save those big things. Not that no one can die. Like if Luke had died in this movie, that would have been plenty. The fact that we lost Luke, Phasma, Snoke, they killed all those rebels in the beginning. You killed Holdo, who you just introduced. I mean, the freaking body count in this movie was ridiculous. I don't understand why it was necessary.
I mean, they literally blew up like, was that a Star Destroyer?
Oh, no. You want to talk about the Holdo maneuver?
Yeah, they destroyed 2 ships. The one at the beginning that Poe and the bombers. It's a Devastator or a Dreadnought.
Dreadnought. Yeah, that's it.
But then yes, towards the end of the movie, they also destroy the Snoke's personal ship. Let's talk about the Holdo maneuver.
Yes. One of the coolest things I've ever seen on television.
Yeah, yeah.
Every time it happens, like I just and I get like goosebumps. I'm like, oh, something cool is happening. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I said it last time, but I'll say it again. I literally said, holy shit, out loud, involuntarily in the movie theater. It was dead silent. It was just visually so stunning. Oh my God.
I think it is the most effective use of silence that I've ever heard in a movie. Like just having it be entirely silent for like 2 seconds. And I was never quite sure. And are you like, because you see the thing happen to Snoke's ship, and then something happened to all the ships behind, like in a cone behind it. Was the idea that like debris from it like knocks out all the Star Destroyers behind it?
Yeah, I think the idea is that like she's going so fast, she pummels through the first ship, and her ship breaks into pieces. Snoke's ship breaks into pieces, and all that debris is still on that trajectory because it was going so fast that it just shoots through all the ships behind it, shattering everything in its path.
Right.
That was my interpretation, at least.
I was like, she created a lightning bolt. That's how it happened.
Yeah. I mean, it was a cone weapon. If you've done D&D, you know how those work. It's like a dragon breath weapon.
Yeah. Speaking as a dragonborn sorcerer.
There you go. Yeah, when I think about the rest of Star Wars and the rest of what they've told us about hyperspace, I don't think it makes any sense. And I utterly don't care. Like, to me, it is one of those, like, it's why I don't want to know the rules. I don't want to know the rules of the Force. I don't want to know the rules of hyperspace. I want to have some mystery so that something like this can exist. And I'm not going to sit there like, oh, no, but the ship would have gone this fast, or this wouldn't have happened, or why didn't they do it before, or whatever. Like, it was an amazing maneuver. Let's just enjoy that.
And why did we do it before? Just maybe no one thought of it. Maybe Holdo was just original, and maybe, it's also like, I mean, they kind of walked it back a little bit in episode 9, just slightly saying like, that's 1 in a million for that to work or whatever, it's just such a small chance. And I think that alleviates a little bit of it, I guess. Cause I mean, I think that like for it to work, it has to be like, she has to go through just the perfect space. It has to be the perfect element of surprise. There's so much that has to go right for that to work. But I mean, just again, I agree, Matthew. I just don't care. Like from a visual standpoint, not everything in Star Wars makes sense. It's just how Star Wars is. And you have to have a little bit of suspension of disbelief, I think. I mean, come on. You have to spend a little disbelief in Star Wars. And it's just like, every time I watch it, you're right. The silence, the visuals, as a photographer, what the visual of it just is so beautiful and raw, and just it almost harkens back. And it felt like a slight harken back to the charges that Jango Fett uses, seismic charges Jango Fett uses in episode 2, where it's just dead silent. And then the exploding sound, and you're just like, oh my God.
That was so good.
Perfect. It was
the sonic. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of Attack of the Clones. Sorry, Aaron, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Star Wars, as it loves to do, did some like context backfilling with this kind of a concept.
as it likes to
in
do.
the High Republic books.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I just love the concept of like just war through hyperspace. Like it's such a terrifying concept. And it's how, in this movie, they're like, they tracked us through hyperspace. Like it's something that nobody has thought of, but Holdo thought of it. And apparently people thought of it a long time before that, but we're gonna pretend everybody forgot and then Holdo rethought of it.
We'll see.
Maybe Holdo was a good student and just actually paid attention.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe she liked history.
Yeah. All right. Any other last things from this movie that we didn't get to talk about last week that we wanted to bring up?
Let me think. What was y'all's take on, like, Rey shows up, saves the day, but we find that she has all the Jedi texts. Did that feel in character to y'all?
That Rey had a bunch of Jedi texts.
I don't know. To me, it feels like Yoda's like, there's nothing in that tree, but the girl Rey is not already possessed. And her having the books, I think, it makes that more of a joke that Yoda has on Luke than a teaching moment. And I feel like it worked better as a teaching moment of like, Rey doesn't need all those old dusty texts. They're pointless. Like the whole point of that scene to me was like Yoda saying, we've moved beyond that. Rey's doing her own thing, and then she took the text anyway and is going to keep them alive. And that felt like it was kind of backtracking on that really cool concept I liked.
Yeah, it felt to me like a bit of a cop-out. It
Thank
felt
you.
to me like, because to me there really is something beautiful about like the synergy there of that both Kylo and Rey/Luke are obsessed with the past. Rey wants to be a Sith, just like, Grandpa. Rey wants to be a Jedi, just like all these legends she's heard about. And that what Yoda is teaching and they're both learning is no, kill the past, create something new.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was really disappointing to me. And I kind of was able to write it off and think maybe the idea is that like, again, I was thinking to the next movie, like it's going to be trying to start again, that it's going to be like something that she's tempted by, but is able to finally be like, she's going to close those books entirely and be like, no, I don't need these. We're starting something new.
Mhm.
Of course we didn't get that. Yeah. So, and again, in my head canon, Disney made them put it back in to be like, okay, Ryan, you can't completely destroy all this. Like, but who knows? Maybe Ryan wanted it all in there all the time, but
I also have one other thing I have written down here. I just want to talk about briefly. Kylo, we don't really talk much about Kylo in this movie, and I'm just curious if y'all had thoughts on him. Like the whole movie, you feel like, oh my god, he's gonna Rey's gonna turn him. Like they've been communicating, they've been doing that whole, mind to mind connection thanks to Snoke, and we see Ben Solo. Rey's all pissy, but slowly she seems to get to him, and you're like, oh, maybe maybe there's good in him. And then in the end, he sees dead Snoke and he snaps and he's like, no, I can be king, I can be ruler, I can be leader. Like, did that make sense to you? Are y'all disappointed by that? Did that like what were your thoughts? And I feel like that was a real big watershed moment in this movie of like they worked together. I felt like there was finally a breakthrough. They just kick ass, killing all of the Praetorian guards, defeat Snoke. And then Kyle just turns on her, and Rey looks some great acting by Daisy Ridley. She looks just devastated, defeated. Like, more than I've seen her at any other point in the whole series. She's just like, how could you? Like, how could you do this? Did that? Any thoughts on that for either one of you? Like,
yeah, I think her exact words was, "Don't do this."
yeah,
yeah. It's interesting because I feel like when I initially watched it, I kind of thought he was gonna turn too. But then I sat there and I was like, this is the second movie. If Snoke is dead, who's our bad guy? So it's like he kind of can't turn yet. I was like, well, then maybe just like opened the door. So I don't know. It was I feel like it makes sense for him. I kind of do. Like,
yeah,
it's abrupt, but I feel like people can work together very easily for a common goal for very different reasons. And I think he mostly had his common goal in mind rather than actually teaming up to do something else. I think he was like, we are connected. I see that you're powerful. You're here. Let's take out Snoke. And now that we've won, let's do my thing. And she's like, now that we've won, let's do my thing. And then they're both like, no, fuck you. And then they rip Anakin's lightsaber in half.
Yeah.
That was crazy. They broke a kyber crystal in half.
That was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm more on the last thing of what Aaron was saying there. I don't, because again, and again, maybe this is just me dreaming of what the third movie could have been. But for me, he has just killed his mentor. She has just abandoned her mentor. Like, they're both in this place of like, the Sith are dumb, the Jedi are dumb. Let's meet in the middle somewhere. And to me, it is heartbreaking. Like, I very much wanted Kylo not to do that, which was brilliant filmmaking because it meant I felt Rey's disappointment because I was disappointed too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. Like, they're not close enough yet. And I think, I don't think that Kylo is still just completely dark side at that point. I think he is still kind of like, no, maybe Rey's making some good points when we keep connecting. Maybe there is some more things to think about. And to me, what it's all about is like getting away from this binality of there's either just the dark side and the light side and no nuance whatsoever. And I think he's trying to reach a hand across, but also to say like, but I want to like, it's very much kind of like the Anakin moment right before he fully falls, where he's like, Padme, like you and I could like rule together. Like, and then later, like Luke, you and I could rule together. Like, there's this sense of like, we could do good, but it's still gonna be all about our power. And Rey's able to see that. Rey's able to be like, no, you still want it to be about your power, and that's never going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, I think I agree in that. Like, it made me feel more. It made sense story wise, but it just it broke my heart so much.
Yeah.
And like after Kylo like tried to kill his mom, and like he was just so far gone. I was like, this is your chance. Come back to us, Ben. Come back to us. And she always kept calling him Ben and not using his Sith name. And I really do think that Episode 8 like really pulled at all the heartstrings and the emotion and really well. And again, not a perfect movie as we've discussed. And I think there's a lot of flaws in it. Like all the other Star Wars movies, there's flaws in it. There's some pacing issues, but I think from a visual standpoint and like emotional standpoint, it is far and away the best of the sequels.
Yeah. And I'll just add one other point to this, and feel free to tell me if you think I'm wrong here. Like, I make a joke about him being a fuckboy, earlier, especially in the first and the second movie. But I think kind of here, in a more serious way, and not a way that I'm like, oh, poor him, or oh, poor all the other guys that this represents, but in a way that feels very real. He's someone who has had very little emotional connection with others. He's being raised by the Jedi, and then the person he thinks of as mentor, whether you think his memory is correct or not, his memory is that his uncle, his mentor, was going to kill him, and that his parents had kind of shipped him away, to go be off. Like, he feels abandoned. He feels alone. And now comes this beautiful girl who he feels a connection with, and he feels like you and I are going to totally go and take over together. And very much in that same kind of mold, there's never it's like, oh, you are the perfect person. I've slotted you into my fairy tale. You're going to want all the same things I want because I'm not actually paying attention to what you want. And so when she's like, no, I actually don't want all the things you want. Please go away. He's like, fuck it. Okay, well, I'm just going to go totally bad now. Like, we see that story in real life all the time, and again, not to say like it's a sympathetic, I mean, like we said at the beginning, everything I can be sympathetic, but I'm not saying like, oh, those poor guys who get rejected. It's like, no, it's the fuckboy behavior of like, I don't actually care about this person's wants. I just want I want them to want what I want. But I do think the fact that he like seeks a real connection with her on his terms, gets rejected, and just like, all right, screw it, we're going all the way dark side. Makes total sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with that.
So yeah, I think like if you think about it, you can definitely make it make sense. You can find reasonings, but in the moment, it is incredibly jarring.
Yeah,
because it seems like he's softening up so much throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I think.
ulterior motives or whatever.
Like I think to the answer to the question, I think we are supposed to we do feel disappointed, but I think that's kind of part of the brilliance of it.
Of course, yeah.
Any other last comments on this before we can get to the fun cosplay question?
R.I.P. Master Skywalker. That's it.
Gone too soon.
Yeah. It pains me that we never really got the connection moments, like I still think that to me, the moment that always makes me sob the most, there's so many moments that make me cry in this movie, but the moment that hits me the most is, wait, where's Han? And just like, right. But yeah, I think everything about Luke's story, I just love.
If I may,
Go
sorry, you go ahead, Matthew.
I would say, and I get why some people don't love it, and that's totally okay. I'm not saying that that's invalid. I'm just saying that, like, a lot of people love it. I'm definitely one of them.
I may have brought this up in this podcast before, but maybe not. Something that actually bothered me was they cut a scene 30 seconds where Luke is in his hut, just kind of like after that news, like he folds up his robe, he's contemplating, like he's taking that minute to grieve and reflect on the loss of Han. And I really wish they had left that in. I know it's a long movie, but like that bond between the two of them is so deep, and it feels like we only get that one line from Luke. And I would really like to see a moment with like Mark Hamill's acting and Luke like thinking back on the loss of his friend and reflecting on the fact that he wasn't there to save Han, to be there to help. And it feels like that would have been a really powerful moment. They filmed it, it was there, it exists. Keep it in the movie. I just that choice I disagreed with, taking that out, because the Luke I know is very emotional and would have, at least for a minute, reflected on, and I think it would have been cool to see that on screen.
I agree. That's a real bummer they took it out of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, because you think about it, like, what's the thing that motivates him in Empire? It's the desire to save the friends, the people he loves, and the idea that because he decided to take the step back, he wasn't there to save Han. Yeah, I never really thought about it in those terms, Alex, but of course that would be part of what would motivate him. So, All right, let's turn to that last question we got from El Violet. Aaron, so let me read it again. What are the things that grab your attention when you decide to cosplay someone?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that go into it, and all my different cosplays have different reasonings, kind of. So, like, for Ahsoka, I was just like, I'm obsessed with her. I don't care how hard this is. I'm doing it. For cosplays like Mystique and Shin and Luna, I'm like, I'm obsessed with these ladies. I'm simping hard. Like, I want them, or I want to be them. I actually want both, is the answer. So it's like, if I'm simping or obsessing over somebody, I definitely like to cosplay them. And some of them are just because it's easy. Like, that's what my Black Cat is. That's what my Poison Ivy 52 is. However, I do love Ivy, and I want to do another version of her. But one thing that's actually interesting is a lot of my characters I don't know that much about. And then I learn about them. Like, my friend was selling her Raven cloak for $20, and it's like handmade, super nice. I was like, give me that. I need a new cosplay. And then I started watching Teen Titans. And now it's just been such a fun adventure of like watching the show and getting to know the characters as I'm making like this bodysuit and like putting the stuff together for her cosplay. So I really like, I guess, how do I pick a character? That was the first question. Somebody that I like enough to learn more about and to like become somewhat intimate with the character.
Yeah, I can see that. Do you feel that there are some that feel like Ahsoka obviously has been such a big connection for you since you were little? Are there some characters who feel more like it feels a little more distant to you than others, or are you able to kind of just whoever the character is when you have the cosplay on, like you are that character?
No, I wouldn't say that. I feel like, what even are my cosplays? I don't feel like I relate to Felicia Hardy very much, but I do love to cosplay Black Cat. I don't know. I have trouble with like the flirtier, like lighthearted personalities. I can do like intense, or I can do like funny and cutesy, but I'm not good at like, I don't know. So yeah, I guess, and I also really don't know much about that character, so she feels pretty distant to me.
I can see that.
But I would say all the characters I currently cosplay, there's like an aspect about them that I really identify with. Like, I mean, yeah, for Mystique, like I'm obviously not a shapeshifter, but as someone with ADHD who is on the spectrum, like I relate to that kind of like shape-shifting between friend groups or between like the people you're interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just feeling like, okay, well, nobody actually knows who I am and I don't either. Like that's kind of something I went through when I was growing up because puberty. That's how
Yeah.
that works. But yeah, so I kind of relate to her for that. Yeah.
Nice. And Alex, what about you? You've done a little cosplay, right?
Mhm.
Not at the godlike level of Aaron, but I do have.
Immortals can.
Yeah, I've cosplayed as Anakin and Obi-Wan, and also for any anime fans out there, I've done Naruto Uzumaki a couple times.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it was really just as a kid, I loved Halloween. I still love Halloween. It's like my favorite holiday. And dressing up as, there's photos of me when I was in first grade and second grade and many other grades, dressing up as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I felt like such, and, whenever I had my little plastic lightsaber as a kid, I felt like so powerful. I felt like I was reenacting the heroes that I always looked up to, and it made me feel safe and secure and strong. And I think that as an adult, when I finally got some adult money and I got a real lightsaber, I was like, I need the Jedi robes to match. And so I got my Obi-Wan cosplay when I was in college and got an Anakin one a year or two ago. And
Nice.
it just feels very freeing. Kind of like Aaron said, like no one really knows who I am. And like my cosplays are not very expensive. They're not like probably perfectly accurate either, but it still feels really cool to dress up. I feel really just, feels fun. It's fun for me. Like, I don't care if no one else appreciates it, I appreciate it. And
what matters.
I think that's what matters with cosplaying. And my very limited experience, that would be my advice to anyone who is like entry level and just wants to get into it, is just do it for yourself. And if you have fun with it and really enjoy it, people like Aaron are out there and exist and will gladly give you advice and talk to you and help you build yourself up. So
definitely
give it a go.
And I'd say, yeah, I've done less cosplay than either of you. I was Admiral Akbar when I was 7 and 8 for Halloween. But I just had a mask and like a white uniform. I have Jedi robes, and probably like the closest thing I've done to cosplay was when I've been getting very involved in the TCG, the collectible card game, Star Wars Unlimited, which is a great game. I'll talk about that at some point. I've been judging a lot. And on May the 4th, I got to judge a tournament for that while wearing sort of Jedi robes with my judge shirt over that. But it wasn't really cosplay. It was still like me as a judge, but just with the Jedi thing. But I've been wanting to for a while. I've been thinking a lot about trying to do something with my wheelchair, and there's a lot of awesome people who are doing stuff like that. I just haven't had the time and the money to, mostly the time to kind of really dedicate to it. But I hope to, because I'm just constantly inspired by Aaron and so many other people who are following me or following us on, who I find on social media all the time. So, Violet, thank you so much for the question. Same to Darth Hobbit. To all of our listeners, please keep sending us questions and things like that. We're going to have some bonus content about the next chapter in that book from a certain point of view. And for everybody else, thank you so much. We have spoken.
Stay classy. Canto bite.
I will teach you the ways of the Jedi and why they need to end.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Is Canto Bite the actual planet, or is that just the town?
I have no idea.